Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk. Back in the video today, and we're going to be recapping the Houston Texans Day 2 of free agency. Not as, crazy as Day 1 was. Yesterday, on Day 1, the Texans made 6 signings. Today, they only made 2, plus a trade, plus a player being released. Let's talk about it. Since this is free agency, not trade or release, we're going to start with the players that were signed. Let's start with Noah Brown. The Houston Texans signed Noah Brown, former Cowboys wide receiver, to a 1-year, $2.6 million contract. I love this deal for the Texans. Number one, can we speak about how cheap the Houston Texans got him for? A year ago, in last year's season, he had 555 receiving yards for the Cowboys and 3 receiving touchdowns. And at times, he was their best wide receiver. If CD struggled, he stepped up big time. Now, CD didn't struggle a lot, but if he did, and it wasn't playing, whether he was out, which he didn't miss a lot of games, or whether he wasn't playing that good, or he was off, Noah Brown stepped up. And, him being on a different team now with, the Texans, where the Cowboys, it's different. You got 2 wide receivers that are better than you. Now, I'm not going to list him as the number 1 in Houston, but I do think he can play like a number 1 in Houston and not have 2 guys ahead of him. Right now, the way I got it listed is I got Noah Brown being the number 1, the number 2 for the Texans, John Mechie being the number 1, and Robert Woods being the number 3. And then Nico Collins being, the extra guy. That's how, the Texans, they have 4 wide receivers where all of them could be starters, but one's going to be the odd man out, and I think that's going to be Nico Collins. But I think Noah Brown's the number 2. I think Woods 3. I think Mechie is 1. But yeah, so you got those 3 guys. It's going to be awesome to watch. I wish you could have gotten him for more than a 1-year contract. I wish you could have signed him to a 2-year deal, but I think if, once a rookie quarterback comes in, I think he'll be able to fall in love with it and eventually want to stay in Houston. Then let's get to the next signing the Houston Texans made. The Texans re-signed to a 1-year deal defensive end, now switched to linebacker, Derek Rivers. I like this signing for the Texans, re-signing for the Texans, because this is a guy who was really good for the Texans in preseason last year, but then had a season-ending injury in the finale against the 49ers, and we didn't get to see anything from him. He was great. He was phenomenal in the preseason for us last year, but sadly we didn't get to see more from him, and it's going to be exciting to see what he has in training camp and preseason after everything that's happened to him in the last year, and it's going to be really fun to see if he can keep up what he did last year in last year's preseason. Then the last couple two, this is a 2-for-1. The Texans this morning trade for right guard Shaq Mason. I love this deal for the Texans. Right guard was one of the most troubled positions on the Texans O-line last year, that and center, and the Texans fill that void at right guard today. A.J. Cann was the starter for the Texans at right guard last year, and he was probably one of the worst offensive linemen for the Texans. And they add in a great veteran in Shaq Mason, who's 29 years old, has a lot of experience. He's a great O-lineman. It's going to be great to see that Texans O-line, improve with this trade. Now, trade details. Shaq Mason and a 7th-round pick in this year's draft will be heading to the Houston Texans for a 6th-round pick in this year's draft. I love this trade for multiple reasons, and I'm going to say it. I like that we are not only getting a super amazing veteran guard in Shaq Mason, but I also am glad we are getting a 7th-round pick instead of a 6th. I know that sounds crazy, but right now, the Texans have 1 7th-round pick. Or before this trade happened, they had 1 7th-round pick. And they had 4 6th. Now, in order to get the deal done, you had to do that pick swap. And I'm glad that, because I didn't want to see us, to be honest, I know I say all the time, take all the picks you can get, but I didn't want to see us keep 4 6-round picks. I'd rather have three 6th-round picks and 2 7ths than four 6th and 1 7th, because you can find a lot of different talent in the 7th round than you can in the 6th round. So yeah, and you get a nice veteran guard in Shaq Mason, and it's amazing. Now, because the Texans traded for Shaq Mason, they released AJ Cann, who was the starter at right guard last season. Get him out of here, please. He did a decent job, but he was easily the worst position for the O-line last year. He gets out. He goes out. He gets released, and it clears $5 million in cap space for the Houston Texans. So overall for today, I liked what the Houston Texans did. They got a great wide receiver, Noah Brown, for really cheap. They filled a void at O-line, which was a very big struggle for them last year. They re-signed a player that was on their roster last year that was tremendous back in training camp and in preseason, but had a season-ending injury in the preseason finale against the 49ers. So it'll be fun to see what he has for us next season in the preseason. That's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoy your thoughts, and peace out. Go Texans.